Following takes place between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Events occur in real time.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to FBC Radio Live. It is Thursday, December 16th. John, Spider-Man Day, my friend. I know you don't care, but I do. I don't even care if anyone else cares. I care. 3:30 today, I'm going to go see the brand new and latest Spider-Man movie. Always been a big fan, so I'm pretty excited. For that. But that's not even the best part about today, John, because we get to cap it off tonight. I'll be home in time with plenty of time to spare to watch the Chargers and Chiefs go at it tonight for the right to call themselves the division leader in the AFC West. It's going to be a pretty fun night today.
It should be, and the Chargers have been successful against the Chiefs over the last several years. Remember, I think in 2018 they went in and beat the Chiefs. I think it was a Thursday night game. They made the playoffs that year. They, kind of slumped the last 2 years, but with Justin Herbert, they've had a bounce back this year. Obviously, I think the Chargers are a playoff team, and if the Chargers win, both teams will be 9-5, and the Chargers would be 2-0 against the Chiefs this season, which would give them the tiebreaker. Now, if the Chiefs win, they'll have a 2-game lead, and you would think that they'll be able to win the AFC West. So, yeah, this is a huge game, and we were talking about this even last week, that, obviously taking us about 2 minutes to bring up Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady as the two best quarterbacks in the NFL, which we agree they are. But these are the next two best, I think. I think Mahomes and Herbert are the next two best quarterbacks in the NFL. And I also think that this is going to be a great rivalry for the next 7, 8, 9 years because they're in the same division. Looking forward to tonight's game. It should be fun.
Yeah, no, look, I'm not gonna disagree with you on that one. And look, by all indications, certainly at this point in both their careers, it seems pretty obvious that they are the next, next grouping of quarterbacks. Again, I know people throw out the Dak Prescotts and the, all that stuff, but at a certain point, like, yeah, okay, Dak's a really good quarterback. I mean, these other guys are really good quarterbacks, but you see the ceiling with these other two, and doesn't mean they're perfect yet, but certainly they got a lot of growing to do, and certainly it makes the future. Certainly, if you're an AFC West or a fan of any of these two teams, it's going to be hopefully a fun rivalry. For many years to come. But look, I mean, you're right. The Chargers have had the Chiefs number, and let's face it, right now the Chargers offense is, in my opinion, far more dangerous than the Chiefs offense. We talked about it yesterday and on Monday. Sort of like, okay, if over the last 8 weeks or so, if the Chiefs aren't playing the Raiders, well, they're not really putting up a lot of points. And scoring under 22 points for what I think 6 weeks out of the last 8, that's not good. And that's certainly not going to keep you competitive with some of these other teams. Now, the Chiefs defense has been great. Them and the Patriots in the AFC have been superb for at least the latter part of the last 6 weeks. I think the Patriots have been a solid group from day one. Chiefs obviously are making up some ground after a slow start. But the point is they're both playing really good football right now. So that could play a huge difference. I just don't know if the Chargers jump out to a big lead and put up some points, do you trust the Chiefs to match it? I know it sounds crazy and it sounds silly, but based on the last 8 weeks, I don't know.
Yeah, I would still consider them scary, partly because the Chargers defense isn't all that great either. Obviously, if you're looking at the 4 units, the Chiefs defense is better than the Chargers defense. The offenses, if you want to call it a wash, even if you want to give the edge to the Chargers because of the way they're putting up points right now, just the Chargers defense scares the hell out of me. And also, I know this doesn't get brought up all that often, but sometimes in a game like this, the special teams play can come into play, and the Chiefs always have outstanding special teams play. And for some reason, the Chargers, along with the Green Bay Packers, can't get the special teams right, and that could be some sort of X factor in this game. Although when you're talking about two great quarterbacks like that, and everyone's anticipating a, I don't know, 31-28, 34-31 type game, maybe it doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, right now the Chargers offense, I think, is clicking on all cylinders compared to the Chiefs. But there's some injuries on both sides that are going to be factored in here, right? Chris Jones is out, who is playing. I think he's their best player right now, the Chiefs. I mean, it's sacrilegious to say that, but he's been their best player. He's been like a defensive player of the year type candidate. and then Rashawn Slater, the brilliant young offensive tackle for the Chargers, is out. So that's kind of a wash. They wouldn't necessarily face each other because Jones is inside and Slater's a tackle, but nonetheless, both guys out, we can consider that a wash, and we'll just see if the Chargers have their full complement of weapons and go from there. It should be a really good Thursday night game. Sometimes these Thursday night games are like, where did they come up with this on the schedule? But this one looks really good.
Yeah, and it's certainly setting up to be. Again, I mean, it has a lot of playoff implications, not just for the division, but for the overall conference. Because
Mhm.
now, all of a sudden, too, you got to figure if the Chargers move and leapfrog the Chiefs, the Patriots have a better inside track to the first overall seed because, well, they have the tiebreaker, the head-to-head
Mhm.
tiebreaker over the Chargers. Now, they still had an advantage over the Chiefs because of their conference records, but having not played the Chiefs this year, it opens up more possibilities that could negatively affect the Patriots. Having beaten the Chargers already, that pretty much guarantees that the Chargers would have to finish at least a game above the Patriots to surpass them. So
Mhm.
a lot of things going into it. I look, I think it's going to be a high scoring game because one, the Chiefs defense is taking some hits. I think they're going to be down a cornerback possibly. I'd have to double check, but I know like with all the news coming out, with all the players out or going into COVID protocol, it's kind of hard to keep track of the last couple of days. So I'll have to make sure that I get the names right on who is and who isn't playing. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see this game. I think this is this is a big moment for both quarterbacks, really. I mean, if you're Mahomes, obviously you already have a lot of cachet from your first few years in the league, and rightfully so. You win a Super Bowl, you win an MVP. But for Justin Herbert, I mean, this is a just another opportunity on a national stage to really
Mhm.
elevate his game and elevate his team's game because you and I appreciate what he's done, but you know, how often are they on, national television? Not
Yep.
quite often. And I think both players have not that they have something to prove, but I think there's a lot to be gained for both quarterbacks if they have a strong performance tonight.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers have a really good squad. They've got a brilliant young quarterback. I like the head coach. I think he's got a lot to learn, but I think he's a smart guy in Brendan Staley. They're also playing in the second largest market. The problem is they're like the eighth most popular football team in LA. And tonight you'll see that the Chiefs will probably have two-thirds of the fans in the stands. This is the way it works with the LA Chargers. Like, they play 17 road games. That probably wears on the players a little bit. I mean, it might be nice to have your fans there to support you, but there really aren't many Chargers fans. They're in San Diego, and they push back against the Chargers because the Chargers left San Diego. So a lot of them, don't want to root for that team anymore. So they probably have, I would say, along with the Jaguars, the two smallest fan bases in the NFL, right? I mean, they have no national reach. I mean, obviously, like the Packers and Steelers and Cowboys have a national reach. The Chargers don't even have a regional reach because, as I said, they're probably the eighth most popular team in LA, and that's just among football teams. The Rams are more popular. USC and UCLA are more popular. The Cowboys are more popular. The Packers and Steelers are more popular than the Chargers in LA. That's got to weigh on the team at some point when you never really feel like you're playing a home game.
Oh, sure, but at the same time, if you're if you're mentally a strong, it's not going to matter really too much. You're going to get
Oh,
used
sure,
to it.
yeah, no,
You're going to get
yeah,
used to it pretty quickly.
yep,
I am glad you brought up the Jaguars though, because as you can see on the screen, I intended on starting with this, but we got sidetracked into Thursday Night Football. Urban Meyer, uh, surprise, surprise, did not make it through his first season in the NFL. He gets fired after going 2-11, and I mean, it's not shocking. I'm surprised it took this long. I mean, you and I are both surprised that he got the job to begin with. So, the
right.
idea that he got fired and didn't make it through his first season was, it's it's like duh, like it doesn't surprise me, and certainly based on all the little stories and things that we've heard come out of Jacksonville over the last week or so, I'm surprised it took this long, but it did happen. It did happen last night, and yeah, Urban Meyer, 13 games in the NFL. Lasted just as long as Bobby Petrino.
Bobby Petrino, Lou Holtz, the list is long. Steve Spurrier was not a success. coaching in the NFL. The only real college coaches that have been successful in the NFL, Jimmy Johnson was an incredible success, but he always kind of geared himself to being that. That's what he wanted to be, was an NFL head coach, and he was outstanding at it. Pete Carroll, but let's not forget Pete Carroll, before USC, had been head coach of the Patriots, head coach of the Jets, a successful defensive coordinator with the 49ers. So he was a pro coach that went to college and then back to the pros. And, Jim Harbaugh, the same thing. I know Harbaugh played in the league. He was a really good quarterback. So when he got to San Francisco, he had the connection to the NFL. And I think at some point Harbaugh could go back to the NFL, although he's perfect for college, Harbaugh is, because his shelf life with people is about 3 to 4 years, and that's perfect for college because, players graduate and move on and get away from the nonsense that can be Jim Harbaugh. But who thought this was going to be a success? This guy is a complete a-hole. Yeah. I mean, just it's what he did or didn't do at Florida, what he did or didn't do at Ohio State. I think he's good on TV, but I wonder if any network's going to even touch him with all of this stuff that we're hearing about. There's a million different people you can put on TV as analysts. You don't need to have Urban Meyer. He's pretty darn good at it. But who was surprised at this? This guy's just a first-class a-hole who, again, as a coach in college, was more of a recruiter, which most of them are. But that's the lifeblood of college football, right? Recruit great players and go from there. It wasn't like he had this great offensive or defensive mind, and he's going to take that and translate that into the NFL. Kind of like Lincoln Riley, who went from Oklahoma to USC, is considered like a really bright offensive mind. Urban Meyer was more of a CEO coach who just knew how to recruit. Well, that doesn't help you in the NFL, as we saw in 13 games with Jacksonville.
Yeah, you can't just bully professional players. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you see these guys that are successful college coaches, and look, there's something to be said about being older and having control over kids that are 18 to 22. Yeah, I mean, look, you may see these guys on television. You may see them, ESPN, all that stuff, but they're still kids. I know,
right.
20, 21 you're pushing the kid limit, but the reality is they're still kids, and they're greatly influenced by, guys that are or men or women in authority positions. So Urban Meyer is perfect for college football because he can use his stature to basically control things. You can't do that in professional football. You can't. First of all, I mean, it's just not a great way to handle anything. But second of all, I mean, it's just you have too many people in there that have pride and aren't going to take crap from a guy who. I mean, what does he have to tell these guys, hey, you need to listen to me outside of a massively inflated ego? He doesn't. He has nothing. He has 2 wins. 2 wins and a laundry list of controversial actions based on just being a head coach in the NFL for 6 months. It's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, it just, we knew it was going to be a disaster, and it was. And give Shad Khan credit for moving on from Urban Meyer after 13 games. Now, I'm assuming that Shad Khan and his legal team will try to get out of this contract and talk about, when allegedly he was kicking Josh Lambo, the kicker, in warm-ups, that could be a fireable offense or whatever the case may be. I'm sure there'll be a buyout. If he's owed $50 million, they may just write him a check for 25 and say, please go away. Don't spill the guts on us, and we won't spill the guts on you when you move on.
It's the summer of Urban.
What a great country, isn't it? Yeah. You go in, you sign a $50 million contract, you totally screw up. I mean, you and I could have went 2-11, and then you get a $25 million buyout. I mean, again, we're just, thinking that might be the case. And I'm just wondering, is college going to look at hiring Urban Meyer? I mean, the guy was wildly successful everywhere: Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, Ohio State. The guy can recruit. He can, run a college program, although underneath a lot of bad things happened at these places. I mean, what happened at Ohio State with the assistant coach, Zach Smith, and he kind of brushed that under the rug, and Zach Smith had been hitting his wife, and he just didn't get involved. And that was sickening to me. That's led to him essentially being let go by Ohio State. But there'll be some desperate program that says, "Ooh, Urban Meyer's available. Look at what he's done in college football. Let me bring him in." The thing is, all the jobs are filled now for next year, so maybe he takes a year off and becomes a leading candidate, for 2023. But I wouldn't touch him. I mean, there's got to be other candidates out there that are really good who don't have the baggages that this guy has.
No, and I would imagine maybe a lesser known school is the type of
Mhm.
school that would go out and pay for Urban Meyer, because Urban Meyer's, probably realize it's okay. My stock is very low. You're probably not going to land some, uh, you know, top conference position. You know what I mean? So hey, you take what
Mhm.
you can and see what you can do. And I think we all know the result of that. There's going to be some issue, and he's going to resign, and so on and so forth. Mark my words. I don't know where he's going next if he does go somewhere, but I guarantee you it's not going to end well, because nothing has ended well for him ever.
No.
And like at a certain point, it's like this isn't just a quick. It's like Tom Brady and winning, John. I know people all the time will
Oh
sit there
boy.
and scream
How did you do that one?
because I'm a genius. That's why.
Did you
Uh,
pull your hamstring, or did you,
well,
you know,
that I did.
pull
I got up a
a
little bit
back
too.
muscle or something?
I got up a little bit too quick this morning, which
Wow.
it basically it makes you prone to injury at my age.
What it does, yeah.
But
Me
yes, you for sure. But
Ooh.
no, like I mean, people sit there and scream that wins aren't a quarterback stat, and there's all this stuff that goes into it. But at a certain point, you can't just ignore the pattern here. You know what I mean? Like. Like at a certain point, it's not a coincidence that he wins all these games. At a certain point, it's not a coincidence that Urban Meyer leaves every place that he's ever coached not in a good spot. So,
Mhm.
what do you expect when you hire him? Well, you expect some, I don't know, some media coverage for sure. I mean, that was about the only positive thing that came out of this, but that was pretty much short lived for them because, well, Urban Meyer decided one of his first acts was going to go hire a guy that had just been, basically dragged for being a racist and
Mhm.
misogynistic and all this, and it's like you decide that you're going to go out and hire this guy. I almost feel like we were probably laughing about that then at the time, and it's funny even now because, well, this pretty much summed up exactly who he was. He didn't have a damn clue as to what he was doing.
No, and again, he treated pro players like he treated college players, and that just doesn't work. I mean, we're talking about grown men with mortgages and families and kids, and you can't treat them
That in
like you
some
do an
cases are
18-year-old.
far more successful or accomplished at what they do than he is. Like we're not talking about
Absolutely.
this legendary college coach with a long ass. I mean, he's legendary
Well,
because well,
that part I will. He's a very successful college
he
coach.
is,
I
he
mean,
is,
as much as
he is.
I can't stand him. I think he's the biggest a-hole in sports, and I'm not just saying that today. I just that's one guy. You don't hear me say that about many people. I despise that guy. I wouldn't trust him with my dog, and I don't even have a dog. But the record is pretty damn good in college.
Keith
I
Hernandez.
despise.
him. No, look. I'm not going to say he was a bad college coach, but like I said, I to your point, like what you said before, like he's not an X's and O's guy. He's a recruiter, which in college football,
Right.
like I mean, you can be a people person and be a successful coach. 'Cause guess what? You go to Florida, you're going to be able to recruit people. You know what I'm saying? Like you're going to be there's certain amount of guaranteed success you're going to have when you're at
Yeah.
a big conference school because that's just how it's set up. It's set up for the big schools with big money
Mhm.
to compete. Give Urban credit because again, you do have to eventually convince these people to come here, but that's about the extent of it. Like I'm not sitting here saying like he was this great, strategizer, a guy who came up with these great game plans. And based on
No.
everything we know about him, it's like it almost seems closer to a con artist than an actual football coach, in my opinion.
I've,
So.
I've I've said it a million times. Ian, these college coaches, for the most part, are part televangelist, part used car salesman. That's what they are. Look at Brian Kelly. He goes
My
to
God.
LSU, and all of a sudden he's got a Southern accent, and he's from Chelsea and Everett, Massachusetts,
Yeah.
which is like 5 miles from where I'm at. No one talks like that in Chelsea or Everett. I can guarantee you.
Well, look,
They are con men.
well, we can college. That's the thing. Like we could sit here and I can rant about college coaches. Like the idea that thousands and hundreds of thousands of people my age and younger are in tons of debt for college
Oh yeah,
loans,
yeah,
and you
yep,
have college coaches making 25-30 million dollars. I mean it's absurd, and the idea that is acceptable is beyond me. I mean forget about the predatory student loans that have been issued for years.
Oh, it's crazy.
How do you justify that? And again, that's a conversation for another day. I don't want to get into
And
that because that's
and now the players the coaches are flipping out because the players are getting some money.
Yeah, now they're
Right?
getting
And so
money.
it's like, oh my God, they can't get any money. The kids can't possibly make, some money for themselves because I'm making, $12.5 million a year.
Well,
God forbid
and their
the
response is
quarterback
always
makes
like,
100,000.
their response is always like, well, they're getting a free education. They should be getting an education. That shouldn't be a privilege. Like you shouldn't be, you shouldn't have to be advantaged to get an higher education. So yeah, see, now I'm getting pissed off.
No, I'm with you.
I have a lot of strong opinions when it comes to that, or at least I feel very strongly in my point of view, because I know there's people out there that are sitting there, well, you don't have to take the loans. Well, guess what? When you're 17 years old, 18 years old, you sign a piece of paper after being told your whole life to go to college. Well, guess what?
Right.
That's called being, having predatory loans. And then you see examples of people paying their loans for years and somehow having a higher balance because these interest rates are outrageous. And
it's insane. The whole system is rigged. I sound like Bernie Sanders here, but the system is rigged.
No, it is. Well, if you're Bernie Sanders,
the system is rigged.
You'd be just another politician, just like Joe Biden. I mean, all you got to do is just lie, say whatever you want.
Yep.
That's why I love politics, but I hate it. I love politics because it's so stupid, and the fact that people buy into it every single time just is beyond me. And we've talked about this off the air. This isn't me. I don't align myself either side of the aisle. I think I again, just like college coaches, I think politicians are con artists. All of them. All of them.
Absolutely.
All of them are. So,
absolutely.
Again, when you get up there and it's like, there's tweets out there of him explicitly saying, we're going to, we need to forgive student loans X amount of dollars, and then turn around and be like, nah, we're not doing it. It's like, I wonder how many people voted for him because of that. You know what I mean? How many people in the 25 to 35 range decided they were going to vote for him because of that? But hey, this isn't a political show. I don't want to get off too much of we're starting to get sidetracked here. This is an alternate reality where I actually care about politics and we actually talk about it. The reality.
How about those Chargers and Chiefs?
Yeah, Chargers and Chiefs. Chargers and Chiefs. That's right. And Aaron Rodgers' big sore toe. The poor guy just going through so much.
I've sent him some, some home remedies.
Some bomb. Did you give him a bomb? Some Chinese bomb.
I love that episode.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
Oh my God.
People
must listen and go, what the hell are these two guys talking about? Like everybody must be saying that. Unless you're a big Seinfeld fan, you don't get all the inside jokes. But yeah, I sent him something. I sent Aaron a little home remedy.
It's all right. Our guy Joel, he knows. That's all I care about. As long as he understands what we're talking about, and 99%
that's all that
of the
matters.
time, that's exactly. So that's all I care
Joel's
about.
Joel's our biggest fan. I love Joel.
Yes, he is. I guarantee you, we're gonna get a message in just a couple seconds. Pressure's on Joel.
Okay,
it's got to be something good. No, look, it's going to be a great night tonight. I think it's a great way to, a great way to kick off. Really, this final month of the season. Every team has 4 games left. You have these playoff races that are getting pretty tight, and things can change week to week at this point. This is where we're at. So I'm excited for tonight. It's. I could have told you this is exactly how it was going to play out, but as I mentioned before, I mean, I think, and I'm fairly certain what my opinion is pretty objective. I think Brady is clearly the front runner for MVP, but we're getting campaigning from every person in the world, and let's just put it this way. And I should have brought this or had this ready to go. Excuse me, I did not need to burp on microphone here. Usually I hit that mute button, but the amount in which we both understand that there's a certain level of success and statistics that go into winning an MVP. I mean, it's just how it is. It's always been that case. There's no, it hasn't changed. It's like you have to have team success, and you also have to have a fairly decent stat line. I mean, it is how it is. That's how MVPs work. Well, in every conceivable positive offensive statistic for individual and team, aside from EPA, Tom Brady is number 1, and in EPA he's 3rd. And I'm talking about passing yards, passing touchdowns, offensive DVOA, offensive points per game, third down, everything. I mean, it's almost like I could make a better case that Tom Brady should be a unanimous MVP than I could to make a case for Aaron Rodgers to win the title right now. Does that make sense? Even though I do think that he's certainly number two in this race. I just think the gap is so strong. I mean, you're talking about nearly 1,000. I mean, Brady has a 900-yard lead in passing yards, and you know me. I mean, I'm not a huge stat guy, but I understand what this award is and how it's handed out. Like that's a huge gap.
Did
Touchdowns.
Brady not win? But Brady won the MVP in 2010 without throwing for a ton of yards, if I remember. I mean, I'm just doing this off the top of my head. He had a ridiculous touchdown to interception ratio, and the Patriots were 14-2 with a mediocre defense, and he deservedly won the MVP in 2010, which was his second MVP. But I don't think he threw for a ton of yards that year. But because the touchdown interception ratio was so good, and because the team was 14-2 and he was brilliant, he deservedly got the MVP. So I don't know about the yards part of it. I know it's all about numbers, and look, Rodgers has won it 3 times based on numbers. He had the best numbers the 3 years he won his MVPs, and that's the way it usually works. But I think Brady did win in 2010 without throwing for a ton of yards.
They also had the first-ranked offense, and they were number one in passing touchdown. Like, he led the league in passing touchdowns with 36.
Right, so that's important. Absolutely.
Important.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Brady deserves the MVP this year. I don't know, but unanimous is always tough because I hate the way they do it in the NFL. There's 50 people that vote, and they only vote for one guy.
Yeah.
Like, there's no first, second, and third. So it's tough to be unanimous because it's tough to get 50 people to agree on if today's Thursday or not, let alone who the MVP of the league is. But if you could just do, 5 points for first place, 3 points for second place, and 1 point for third place, kind of like they do in other sports, then I think you'd get a fairer indication. He's going to win the MVP unless he has a bad 4-game stretch and Rodgers throws for 12 touchdowns and no interceptions over the next 4 weeks, which I think he can do. I just don't think Brady's going to fall off the rails in the final 4 weeks, especially, the tough part of his schedule is pretty much over.
Yeah, and look, I mean, unanimous might be a stretch, but again, I think it's more. I think the thing being, it's more likely that he's a unanimous MVP than Aaron Rodgers is currently an MVP. Because again, this isn't a slight against. I mean, it is. Yeah, I guess it is based on the coverage that.
Go for it, Ian. Go for it. Go it.
You know how it is. Like, I don't necessarily want to do these things, but when I get on, Twitter or whatever, and I see people, national media going up and shamelessly saying, like, forget everything that's happened this season. Aaron Rodgers.
I haven't noticed that about you, Ian. I've not noticed that.
I have to
fighting with people on Twitter. You can't help yourself. I love it.
Well, stupidity drives me nuts, John. It really does. Like I had the fortunate opportunity to converse with someone earlier who said very explicitly that Tom Brady always has a top 10 defense. So when I took him literally at his word, he accused me of not being able to understand. And then I'm sitting here scratching my head. I'm like, just admit that you worded it wrong or you were wrong. Or like yesterday, I saw someone, sit there and say with like all confidence, Godwin and Mike Evans both played 16 games last year. Well, Chris Godwin only played 12 games last year, and that was part of the argument they were making as to why the team carried Brady or something stupid like that. And it's like, instead of just admitting that you were wrong, these people double, triple, and quadruple down with no shame. And it's honestly, it's entertaining. Like I find it very entertaining, John, but also maddening because I'm like, why are you doing this? What's the benefit? What benefit do you get out of this? And it drives me nuts.
Well, you've got to be more like Rich Uncle Skip, who doesn't follow anybody on Twitter.
Yeah,
he's got like 1 million followers. He doesn't follow anything. So be like Rich Uncle Skip and don't follow anybody, and you'll avoid these confrontations.
Well, Rich.
Isn't that the height of arrogance on Twitter that you don't follow anyone?
Oh, yeah.
Like, because to me, I love Twitter for information. Like, I mean, I don't agree with all of it, but I follow different political Twitter handles because I want to hear all the different sides. Same thing with sports. I follow Patriots fans, I follow Packers fans, and I kind of laugh, when they go at it. Or now it's Tampa Bay fans going at it with Green Bay fans. But I want to get information. I love the information you get from that, and that's the good thing. So if you don't follow anyone, you must be thinking of yourself as a know-it-all, which Rich Uncle Skip is, obviously.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the I'm looking at that 2010 season. Brady was actually 8th in passing yards. Philip Rivers, 4,700 yards that year. 46.
Yeah.
That was pretty. But again, this kind of goes into my whole, yardage totals don't necessarily mean success. Look at guys like Jameis Winston. Some of Drew Brees' high yardage seasons weren't considered a success. In this case, the Chargers went 9-7. He had one of the higher interception percentages of those top tier quarterbacks. So yeah, yardage isn't great. But to your point, obviously
36-4, right? Wasn't it 36-4 touchdowns to interceptions?
Which was obvious.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
that's 9-1. That's ridiculous.
Which is obviously Aaron Rodgers is getting, that's his saving grace. That's the ammunition that every Rodgers fans will hold, even though it's essentially like shooting a BB gun into a freight train at this point. A touchdown to interception range. I stole that from Armageddon, by the way. For those fans out there know that movie. Yeah.
You even like bad movies. Yeah. Sometimes reference bad movies.
Bad movie. What are you talking about?
Good song by Aerosmith.
Yeah,
we'll say that one.
That was basically just a big promo for an Aerosmith album. So
it was.
No, seriously though, it's everyone will sit there and scream about touchdown interception ratio, which obviously you want to throw more touchdowns than you want to throw interceptions, but it's not the be all end all. And to prove, to kind of sit there and put in perspective, Tom Brady was doing this too. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't unique. This isn't Aaron Rodgers being the most protective player of the football ever. Like, look, that's his best quality is that he doesn't turn the ball over. Correct?
Both of those guys. That's what makes them better than the rest. I mean, Peyton Manning threw interceptions. Brett Favre threw way too many interceptions because, they sometimes would force it. Oh, Lord. I mean, Eli Manning led the league in interceptions, I think, 3 times. No, what makes these two guys so great is they take care of the football. I mean, and that's so important. They also take care of the football in the pocket. You don't see a lot of fumbles fumbles by Brady and Rodgers. I mean, like we see that with Matt Stafford. I mean, that game against Green Bay where he was barely touched and he fumbled was like, okay, it doesn't look like you're really there today. Whereas Rodgers and Brady don't do that. I mean, that's why they're the 2 best quarterbacks in the sport. So yeah, they're both excellent at that stuff. I would vote for Brady as MVP. His year has just been ridiculous. I mean, he and I'll hold it against Aaron that he had a horrible first game against New Orleans, and Brady never had a game this year remotely close to that. I mean, he was a disaster that day. It probably didn't matter they were going to lose, and I would vote for Brady as MVP. I'd vote for Rodgers second. I think you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, and like I said, that's fine, that's how it should be, and that it should be pretty cut and dry. But we do need to debate things, and people do need to have their opinions. I think it's funny when people get up on TV and say Micah Parsons is the MVP, and I'm just like, that's silly. That's silly. Like I understand being a little bit different and throwing a little wrinkle into it, but that's no. I mean, John, you know the answer to this. I know the answer to this, and I know a lot of our listeners maybe know the answer to this. Who was the last defensive player to win MVP?
Bill Belichick's favorite player of all time, Lawrence Taylor.
Exactly. And that happened. I was
1986. You were what? Were you born yet?
I was an infant. Let's just put it this way. He started the season. I was yet to emerge from my mother's womb. So that's how long ago it was. And
that was 1986, where the game was more balanced, run and pass, and like he was just a freak.
Well, you
had a game plan for him.
Like even suggesting right now that Jonathan Taylor is the front. I see fans out there. A lot of it's because they can't fathom the fact that Brady's going to win his 4th MVP, and anyone else at this point, like that's how we kind of joke. Like every week, there's always a new favorite, but at the end of the day, it's Brady who's been leading this, and he's certainly the odds-on favorite.
Isn't that a compliment, though? In a sense, obviously that. I mean, look, the guy's been around for 22 years, and here he is.
Well, compliment.
In the sense of that.
Well, from the fans out there that are whining and
that are idiots. That are idiots.
I mean, if you don't,
no, but in a sense that it's like, unless they're just saying, this happens with LeBron in basketball. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about him as an MVP candidate.
No.
Actually,
you can't. Honestly, you can't. How can you forget about what Brady? They just don't want to accept it. That's the problem. Like they just can't. They can't fathom that a guy that's 44-year-olds. I mean, remember this, John. 2 years ago,
shouldn't people
90%.
root for this though? As older people, like if I was like I'm 58, and I'm like, geez, I'm only 14 years older than Brady. Maybe I get my life together,
No,
right? I
well,
mean, you're
well,
what,
here's
9
the
years
problem.
younger than Brady.
Here's-
So
here's-
I think middle-aged men should root for the guy
Well-
saying this is freaking unbelievable.
Look, I also feel like he should be the poster child for how to be a professional athlete, but people think he's the worst human being in the world. So you're not gonna
Right, yeah.
you're not gonna bridge that gap. The problem is a lot of these same people that are screaming that Brady's not the MVP, even though he's. I mean, again, if you look at the fact that he's leading everything but that one stat of EPA, it's so obvious that he's the MVP. Because 2 years ago they were saying he was washed and done. I mean, it's the same people like the guys that get up that are on TV. It's like Nick Wright. Like, I mean, he was calling Brady done 2 years ago. So what is he going to do? All of a sudden admit that he's the MVP? No, it's Patrick Mahomes, who I'm like sitting here scratching my head. I'm like, I don't care what the hell happens the rest of the way out. He's not going to make his way into the leader spot in this position. So
No,
it's
Chris Jones is the MVP of that team.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean,
Seriously, I mean, they've been a defensive team for 2 months, and he's been their best defensive player. Arguably, he may be a defensive player of the year candidate. Chris Jones has been that good. I mean, he blows up the passing game.
Well,
that guy, anytime you can get an interior pass rush from a guy like Chris Jones or Aaron Donald, they cause a lot of problems.
Well, it's like, and to the Jonathan Taylor point, people really pushing Jonathan Taylor. 7 unbelievable season, great season. He has 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns.
17 or 18 touchdowns, right? But his team is 7-6. Like, can you have an MVP candidate from a 7-6 team? It's not baseball.
Exactly. That's why I'm sitting here laughing at the people that are just twisting themselves into pretzels. I could make another Seinfeld reference there, but I'll leave it to you guys to run it through your head. They're twisting themselves up.
Like, making me thirsty.
They're twisting themselves up to try to convince themselves that anyone but Brady's the MVP when it's very clear that he is. And like everyone's like, oh, they should just name it a quarterback award. I mean, you could, but I mean, the point is the reason they're always the MVP is because they are by far the most important position on either side of the football. And like as great of a season as Jonathan Taylor has had, he is nowhere as valuable to the Colts as a guy like Brady or Rodgers is to the Packers and Bucks respectively. And again, part of that is just sheer production. As great as Jonathan Taylor's been this season, at best he's produced half as many points as Tom Brady. So like it's you need to have not only a absurdly legendary season from a running back, you also need a down season collectively from quarterbacks in the league because it's just impossible to sit there and assess that a running back is more valuable than a quarterback. And unfortunately that's the case. So it may seem unfair, but it's just how the sport of football is. It's always been like that, and it's certainly been like that more so now the last 20 odd years. It's a quarterback sport. You have a great quarterback, guess what? You're going to win a lot more than you don't. I mean, it's just how it is.
We saw the Buccaneers before Tom Brady arrived. We saw the Packers without Aaron Rodgers this year with Jordan Love. Big difference, right?
Yeah.
So obviously they're the two best. They're going to have the biggest impact on the games. The last time a non-quarterback won the award was 2012. Adrian Peterson, who challenged Eric Dickerson's rushing mark, came up a little bit short. He won the MVP. I still thought Peyton Manning should have won it. He went to Denver and turned an 8-8 team into a 13-3 team. Like they won 5 more games.
This was
Peyton
one
Manning
of
as the quarterback.
Honestly, 2012. I'm looking at this now. Tom Brady goes 12-4, 4,800 yards, 34 touchdowns, 8 interceptions.
Yeah, no, he absolutely.
But
he and Rodgers again belonged in the conversation because Rodgers had pretty similar numbers in his team with 11-5.
He was 39-8 with fewer yards, but this was also a season that Drew Brees threw 5,100 yards, but he went
7-9.
7-9. He threw 19 interceptions. The top 3 passers that year were Drew Brees, Matt Stafford, and Tony Romo. All of them threw over. Like Stafford threw the fewest interceptions at 17, and then all of a sudden you have Brady, and then it's Ryan, Manning, Luck, all with like double-digit interceptions. Then Aaron Rodgers. So you're talking about the top 10 passers, all over 4,000 yards. The only two players that have a decent interception number are Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Everyone else, like I said, I mean,
Right.
you can be impressed with 5,000 yards. I'm not impressed with 5,000 yards when you're throwing 15 to 20 interceptions a season. Like, because to me,
Yeah,
that
Jameis
tells,
Winston, right?
yeah,
30
exactly.
interceptions,
So that
5,300 yards.
tells
Where
me,
did that get
yeah,
them? Yeah.
and not to mention when you're losing games. Like, I don't care if you're throwing 5,000 yards if you're losing games. Like, everyone want to feel bad for, obviously this was before all this stuff came out about Deshaun Watson, but everyone's like, oh, poor Deshaun Watson. Well, you're 4-12. Part of that is because of the quarterback. Like, you can't just absolve someone from going.
Yep.
Like, there's a reason why Tom Brady's never had a below 500 record.
Right. And the thing too is I look at Dak, who's someone I think we both root for. We both like Dak a
I
lot.
like Dak.
The intangibles
Dak.
I like Dak so much. I mean, he seems like a really great guy.
I think
but he's
sometimes
just not at that level.
Yeah, I think his ability has been inflated a little bit. Like,
He plays for the Cowboys.
He
For the Cowboys. Tony
Cowboys
Romo's was inflated. For some reason, Troy Aikman was deflated a little bit. Like, only people realize how great a quarterback Troy Aikman was because they were more of a running team. I mean, I would love to have seen Troy Aikman play in this era. He would have been, a top 5 quarterback easily because he was another guy who took really good care of the football and he could move a little bit in the pocket. He would have been sensational in this era.
I've called Aaron Rodgers this generation Steve Young, and people take it as an insult. So
It's a good compliment. I think he's a little better.
Yeah,
I think because I think he has more. I don't think he's quite the runner Steve Young was.
But they
I
were
think
both,
he's a better arm. But they're both
high
great.
passer rating, low turnover,
low interceptions.
Yeah,
Yep.
Like that's who.
And Aaron's 1-4 in the NFC Championship game, and Young, I believe, was 1-3.
Yeah.
So it's similar type. Not quite winning enough to be up there with the greats of the greats.
Among their contemporaries, they're kind of in the same ballpark. Like, no one would ever right. I don't think anyone. Now, again, maybe you can change my mind on this because you know it a little bit better than I was because I was a little bit younger at the time. But I don't think anyone ever considered Steve Young the best in the game. Like, he was among the best, but I don't think he was widely considered the best in the game for any extended period of time. Correct?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because by then it was more Favre than him.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of strange. Young won 2 MVPs, and then Favre won 3. So they didn't, but in a row. And Green Bay generally beat San Francisco in the playoffs, and then would lose to Dallas.
They went to 2 Super Bowls.
2 Super Bowls where San Francisco went to just 1, and with Young.
Yeah.
And Dallas was the dominant. I mean, those 3 teams were potent: San Francisco, Green Bay, and Dallas. I mean, year in and year out, they were the 3 best teams in football. And if Buffalo would get to the Super Bowl and lose, or some other team would get to the Super Bowl. One year, the Chargers got there and lost to the 49ers, and which was the biggest mismatch I've ever seen. But yeah, I would say they were all in that group. Favre, Marino was still playing. Elway was still right in that discussion. So those were like the 5 guys that we talked about a lot. Ed Aikman, obviously. Well, those were probably the 5 guys.
And look at this. And here we go. I'm going to actually throw Aaron Rodgers a bone. I think he has a stronger case to be higher on the list than Steve Young does. Now, again,
longevity is important because this is like his 14th year being.
Longevity is important. We also have to take into account, again, we're thinking about kind of in the moment. For the majority of their career, there were other players. We both have him over Drew Brees. I think that's pretty clear in my opinion, or in my view.
And Steve Young over Drew Brees as well.
I would too. I mean, and again, this isn't disrespect to Drew Brees. I just, I sometimes in the moment analysis is not the right type of analysis. But still, I'd put Peyton Manning over Aaron Rodgers. Again,
I would too.
Yeah, that's not a bad group to be behind. When you're Aaron Rodgers and you're looking up at Tom Brady and Peyton Manning
and Joe Montana.
Yeah, Joe. Well, I'm saying I'm talking about during his era. Yeah, during his era. Yeah.
He's the 3rd best quarterback of this century. How's that sound? That sounds dramatic. Doesn't it? This century. I mean, we are in the 21st century. In this century, it's Brady, Manning, Rodgers. Those are the 3 best quarterbacks. And look, the all-decade team kind of shows that, right? I think Manning and Brady were the all-decade quarterbacks in the 2000s. Brady and Rodgers, quarterbacks on the all-decade team in the 2010s, and maybe Brady is going to be the all-decade quarterback in the 2020s. Like what the hell? Why not? I don't know.
It's going to be great.
Year in the decade, he won a Super Bowl. The second one, he won an MVP. And I don't know.
It's going to be great when people start, saying Brady was the quarterback in the 2000s, and you think, oh, like you mean like the year 2000 to 2009? No, like the 2000s, from 2000 to 2100. He was the quarterback of the 2000s.
Yeah, he was still playing in 2084 at the age of 107. He was still out there. But that sums it up. Like Drew Brees never won an MVP. Aaron Rodgers has won 3. I mean, that does kind of mean something. I've said this a million times since the Super Bowl era. And again, I can't include Unitas, Otto Graham, Sammy Baugh, all great quarterbacks. Unitas could have certainly played in this era, but of the modern quarterbacks, for me, it's Brady in his own class, followed by Manning, followed by Montana in his own class, and then I have Manning and Elway in their own class, and then I have Rodgers as the head of the next class, which includes Favre, Marino, Steve Young, Roger Staubach, Terry Bradshaw. I mean, they just were so great. Mm-hmm. I mean, Staubach was a guy I think you would have loved if you were my age.
I'm a fan.
You would have absolutely would have loved him. He was. There were a lot of similarities to Brady. That there was no deficit that you could feel comfortable with, or that Dallas would feel uncomfortable with. He came off a bench in a playoff game once, and they were down 12. Came off the bench and engineered 2 scoring drives to beat San Francisco in 1972 on the road. I mean, the guy was a commander in the military. I don't think the football field really intimidated him. Like, right, so he had that going for him. But I think that you would have loved Roger Staubach if you were my age. He probably would have been your favorite quarterback. I'm guessing because those are the qualities you like.
He's got the number 12 too.
Yeah,
you like it. You like it. So, all right. So we got to say goodbye. Remember, Thursday tonight, Chargers Chiefs. Tomorrow, obviously, we'll break down the game. Urban Meyer does anything else between now and then, we'll talk about that as well. And of course, we'll preview Week 14, which, folks, it's kicked off on Saturday. It's going to be fun. So everyone enjoy. If you're going to see Spider-Man, enjoy it, because I'm going to. Full costume and all. So if you see me swinging around or getting arrested for trespassing, that is why. So have a great day, everyone, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.